You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey Dr. O,
Brandon Sanders,
Robin Mock,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is...
Thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm super excited to have Elyssa Friedland back on the show with me to talk about her brand new book, Last Summer at the Golden Hotel. What a fun, great read this is. Elyssa, I didn't want to put the book down, and I think that's, the highest compliment that you can pay an author is that you don't want to leave their story. And, things are warming up and the world is looking a little better now. And yeah, I think this is a perfect book for going into the spring and summer months.
Thank you so much. I agree. There are a lot of distractions in the world. And so for an author to hear that a reader couldn't put their book down, it's really meaningful today because there's a lot of other exciting things to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Elyssa, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but the last year or year and a half has been kind of crazy, and has been a trial for everyone that I've met. How have you and your family weathered this storm that we've been going through?
Well, I guess I'll just explain. So I'm married and I have 3 children who are, when the pandemic hit, were in 6th grade, 4th grade, and 1st grade. And I'm also a teacher, which I don't know if you knew. I teach writing at Yale, which is also where I went. So I was in the middle of my semester when the pandemic hit. So as a teacher, I had to quickly shift to teaching on Zoom, which I thought was pretty difficult. And my kids also just, it was a bit of a mess,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, every 5 minutes, it was like, the printer's not working, the Wi-Fi went out, I got kicked off the Zoom, and it was really chaotic. And then I would say it was mostly chaotic the entire year until from March to June. And then we had a fairly decent summer. We were out on Long Island we live in Manhattan, but we were out on Long Island in our summer house. And we were really lucky that we had a place to go. I mean, many did not and were, stuck in Manhattan, which was ground zero for infection, and
Right.
We were very lucky, although I did have COVID. I got COVID really early on.
So did I.
So I was, so you know how fun that was.
Yeah.
And I was pretty sick for March, April, and May. It took me a while to get better, but then I made a full recovery, and I would say our summer was okay. Our summer felt sort of normal. I mean, our children didn't go to camp or anything, but they were home and they were, they had a nice summer. And then we went back to school, and going back to school was nothing like what they were used to. I mean, we felt fortunate that they were able to go back. Not every school went back, but it was hybrid schedule. Some of them only there 2 days a week. Then somebody would get an infection or have an exposure, and then they'd be home for 2 or 3 weeks, So I would say chaos was the name of the game. And now things feel a little bit better. I personally feel like I can breathe now.
Right. I'll tell you what, my oldest daughter got married last summer, and if you think life is chaotic, try planning a wedding in the midst of a pandemic. That is chaos like you've never seen before.
Well, I can tell you, well, congratulations. We planned, I don't know if you know what this is, but we planned a bar mitzvah in the midst of the pandemic. My oldest child became a bar mitzvah during COVID.
Nice.
And
congratulations.
As you know, planning any sort of celebration in COVID is take a normal event that's complicated and multiply by 20, and certainly how I felt. So it sounds like we can relate on that.
Yeah. So your new book, Last Summer at the Golden Hotel, if we know anything about publishing, then this book has probably been off of your desk for quite a while, as you go through edits and then all of the things that happen with publishing. Where were you with this book when the pandemic hit? Was it completed and turned in? Were you still in edits? What was that process like of trying to get a book finished up and out to the world?
So crazily enough, and I think it's because like I've blocked out something, I can't completely remember, but I think I was still working on edits. Yeah, because I remember being really feeling stressed when the kids went into homeschool because the book wasn't done. I was still writing, and then I think I turned it in sometime in June, and I got it back in the summer, and then by the fall, we had like a final version, and we moved to like a final copy edited version, probably by like November, I would say, of this year. So definitely working and still writing during the pandemic in the beginning, but like already had a full complete first draft. So edits, but substantial edits.
Gotcha. I don't know that I realized that you taught writing. As maybe I did, but maybe I'd just forgotten. But as someone who teaches writing, one of the great things about teaching something is that as a teacher, you learn more about the thing as you share it with others. How do you feel like teaching has affected your own creative process, and how has it maybe helped you grow as a writer by teaching others the craft?
I think I'm definitely a stronger writer because I'm a writing teacher now. I started last year, so this is my second year teaching, and I do so much editing of my students' work that I'm just quick to pick up the same errors in my own work. And I teach them, I have lessons devoted to different aspects of writing, like pacing and character building and dialogue. And when I read, we have a writing textbook that I think is very good. And when I read it and reread it, I actually think I'm still absorbing lessons, and some things especially like come more easily to me than others. And so I've always been a natural at dialogue, but I struggle with other things. And teaching writing has helped me, especially with my deficits, I would say. And my students are really inspiring. And we read novels together as a class that I pick out as like really fine examples of great writing. And there's like the books I choose, I feel like I pick them very specifically. Like, the 3 books we read this semester, it's like one I feel like is a really great book to teach like how to write multiple point of view, and another one is like a great way of how to write humor. And so there's something to be learned from each of the books. And so just reading the books with my students and hearing the things they point out, I think it's like more than ever I know how the sausage gets made, because I'm deconstructing the books that we read, and I'm deconstructing their writing and showing them like, this is great, but like maybe you should have opened with the supermarket scene. Like just because you thought of the supermarket scene first before the bedroom scene doesn't mean that you shouldn't reorder those, or show them like these 2 scenes would actually, there's no reason to separate them. They would work very well combined. And they maybe will say to me like, but that's not what really happened. And I'm like, but that's fiction. This is not your real life. You don't have to tell it in the way it exactly happened to you. Like that's the fun of fiction. So I feel really good about my writing improving from teaching. It's not why I got into it, but it's a happy accident.
Sure. Elyssa, we'd love to talk about, the debate between nature versus nurture, and especially when you're, talking about people's personality and things like that, what makes a person the way they are. But along those same lines, do you think that anyone can write fiction? Can anyone be taught the craft, or is it a gene or something like? Or are some people natural born storytellers? Or can everyone become a better storyteller at least? What do you think about that?
I definitely think everyone can become a better writer, but I don't think everyone can achieve greatness. I think that there's like some element of a natural gift that people are born with. I also think that there are some people who aren't necessarily that creative. So they're, even if they have tremendous facility with words, they will do a good job fictionalizing something that happened in their real lives. And you see this a lot with debut novelists, and they write a fabulous book, but then once they've already mined that information and they have to come up with new content, then they really struggle with their sophomore novel. And I think that that's something I see where like there's an inherent limitation if you're not sort of born with a lot of natural creativity. But as far as like technical skill in writing, I mean, I definitely think people can get better 100%. You can learn like to show, we always talk about like show, don't tell, like don't tell me that you were super angry, like show me by throwing a glass against the wall, like don't tell me that you're like using generic words like I'm so happy, like no, like bounce your heels up and down, these are so much more effective. And I teach my students to be as specific and as concrete as possible. So, and to notice things that make somebody come alive, like to say a woman has brown hair and blue eyes is like almost the way like my elementary school child would describe somebody, but I teach my students like it's so much more interesting to see that like the person has uneven eyebrows and that they have like a scar on their nose that maybe was from like a nose ring they used to have. Like, give me the unique things. Like, not that many people have a little scar on their nose that might be from a nose ring, but a hell of a lot of people have brown hair, Right. So, and that I think is very easy to teach.
So, while not everyone necessarily is born to be a John Grisham or an Anne Rice or anyone along that caliber of writer, do you feel like everyone could benefit from learning to tell better stories? Do you think that having this skill set is a good thing for just most anyone to to cultivate?
I think I'm going to answer that in two parts. I think that there are people who could benefit from becoming better storytellers, even better oral storytellers. I mean, we all have people in our lives where it's like pulling teeth, and they just don't even naturally know like the right details when they want to tell a funny story, but they're not picking the right details of what to share. And I kind of struggle with that a lot because I consider myself to be a good oral storyteller as well. So I think that that's something that is nice. Like I feel like my husband is not necessarily like such a great storyteller, so I get frustrated, when I'm like, you've already repeated that detail, or that's so irrelevant to the story, or you're totally like, your like enunciation, like you're not hitting the punchline hard enough. But I would say that as far as writing goes, even if you don't want to be a writer, I think just honing your writing skills, even if you don't want to be a professional writer, I think that this helps people in their day-to-day life. Even in writing emails, I see, and I feel sorry for the people who really do struggle this much, just to write an email, that words don't come to them that quickly. And I think that I tell my students that even if they don't want to become professional writers, and many of them don't, they just wanted to try their hand at creative writing, that this class, being able to express yourself clearly, concisely, with sharp, engaging language will help them even when they're writing an email to their boss. They're a doctor and they want to write an email to their supervising doctor about like something they saw with a patient. Like I truly think that being a better writer will helps a person in no matter what job they're in, because we're all texting, we're all writing emails all day long. And so the crispness that you bring to your writing that you'll learn in my class, like bring it to your text messages, bring it to your emails.
What Death Taught Terrence by Derek McFadden. Life is a journey. So is the afterlife. At the end of his life, Terrence McDonald must discover its meaning, or he'll be banned from the afterlife forever, and his soul will cease to exist. Join Terrence and those who love him on a poignant and unforgettable journey through a life at once wonderful and harrowing. Learn what Terrence learned. See what Terrence sees. By this provocative story's end, readers may even learn a thing or two about themselves. See why people are saying things like, Derek McFadden writes with an insight few can match. If you like the works of Mitch Albom, I think you'll find What Death Taught Terrence a worthy addition to your library, and the reading of it a life-affirming journey. I found the story immediately immersive, and it stuck with me long after I finished. What Death Taught Terrence by Derek McFadden, on sale now.
Authors, I have a fantastic new service to tell you about. It's called PubSite. PubSite is a service to help you build your very own website, your home on the web, where you can promote your work and give your fans a place to connect with you. PubSite is a website platform that allows every author, regardless of budget, to have a great-looking professional website developed by the book marketing professionals at FSB Associates. PubSite is the new, easy-to-use DIY website builder developed specifically for books and authors. Whether you're an author of one book or 20, or a small publisher, PubSite allows you to build, design, and most importantly, update your website pain-free. No need to be dependent on a designer or webmaster to make a small but costly change to your website. Save the money and do it yourself. PubSite is the best platform for authors because it's a book-centric platform. PubSite was built just for authors and small publishers. Every design, feature, and layout is book-centric. They have customized designs for you to use. It's easy to build. No coding or HTML is necessary to create a stunning, professional-looking website with all the features you want. Get a custom domain name, yourname.com. It's simple to update. You can add all of your books, add a blog and a book tour, sell from any retailer, manage your email list and social media, and even do e-commerce. Build your website with a 14-day free trial, then pay just $19.99 per month, which includes hosting. And we offer packages starting at $499 to set up the website for you. Pub-site.com, the place to help authors find their home on the web.
Elyssa, when we first met, we talked about your book, The Intermission. The second time you were on the show, I believe your book, Floating Feldmans, we talked about. And then today, your new book is Last Summer at the Golden Hotel. Looking back over your body of work and thinking about the way that stories sort of form in your mind and that beginning. I love to hear about the beginnings of things and how stories are born.
Sure.
How would you describe what an Elyssa Friedland book is about? What are some of the hallmarks of the style of writing that you have, sort of the niche that you've carved out for yourself?
Well, it's evolved. I would say the Floating Feldmans and the Last Summer at the Golden Hotel, and then the book that I'm working on now, I've sort of found my voice and I found my niche, which is multiple point of view stories that have feelings, that pull on your emotions, but that are also very funny. And I consider myself like good at writing the dramedy. Yeah. And that's my voice. I think that I like write about the things that people think, but maybe don't say out loud. And I try to diffuse in my books, like when there's a tense situation, I use humor to diffuse it, which is what I do in my own life as well. And I think I would say that's my sort of niche right now in writing.
Gotcha. Well, along those lines, because you have really kind of nailed, and it's a hallmark of your work, the multiple viewpoints, and the looking at the story from, getting to see the whole thing from this rotating cast of characters, if you will. How does the story begin for you, since they do kind of take on this form? A lot of times for people, it'll be a particular character and a voice that sort of speaks to them in a weird way, or a character that they come to know, and then the story forms around them, or some people think of a plot point and then start thinking of casting characters in their mind that might act out this, and then see how that works. How does it usually begin for you?
Well, for the Golden Hotel, I had a strong feeling that I wanted to build on the Floating Feldmans, which resonated with so many people, and I got really strong feedback. And so I said, I definitely want to stick with multiple point of view. I love writing multiple point of view, and I love writing about family, but I wanted to take it a step further. I would say that was probably the biggest thing for me, was wanting to challenge myself further, which is, instead of writing about one family, I'm going to write about two families. And then it enabled me not just to delve into family dynamics, but also into friendship dynamics. And by having two families co-own a business, it got into a lot of issues that I could not explore in the Floating Feldmans because they weren't relevant. So sort of the jealousy between two families that are, ostensibly like very close friends, but naturally, their envy is a part of life. And maybe, I think we all know couples where like the wives get along great, but the husbands don't, or vice versa. And so I explore that. And I also enabled me to have some romance in between the two families, which obviously I couldn't do when it was only one family. So now I have different romances in the, occurring between the two families in the different generations. And so it gave me a lot more leeway with plot to be able to get into friendship issues and romance in a way that I was not as able to with the Floating Feldmans, but I still stick to my dramedy formula, multiple point of view formula, and a lot of, fun cultural humor that I have a good time with.
This book, Last Summer at the Golden Hotel, really encompasses it inhabits this interesting cultural phenomenon that can be referred to as the Borscht Belt.
Yes.
What is the Borscht Belt, and why is what was it about this interesting place and time that really I mean, even in popular culture media, even if we're not from the part of the country where this happened and where you are close to, we've seen it in the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Dirty Dancing, any number of stories have taken place here, and we may be remotely familiar with it, but give us a little, how did this thing begin, and what was it that was so enchanting?
I mean, I love Dirty Dancing, and I'm not alone. I mean, that's probably my favorite movie, but it's me and everyone else. It's many, many people's favorite movie. And I could just watch it over and over again. I mean, it captured such a innocent, but some non-innocent things also happen. Sure. But it just captured just a very specific moment in time and in history. And I think my mom grew up going to that region every single summer of her life. My dad went less often, but it was a part of it for him too. And then my parents took us, it was already on the decline, but my parents took me and my brother in the 80s when you could already start to see the hotels falling apart. And I thought a lot about that, I guess. What's it like when something that was really so special and so unique just falls apart? And it doesn't even fall apart for bad reasons. You understand that, airfare is cheap and people can get to Iceland for the weekend now for $100, $100 ticket. So they're not restricted to only being, driving to the Catskills on the weekends. And, this was a time, the Catskills became this region that was populated by New Yorkers when they were trying to recover from tuberculosis, at the turn of the century. And that's not an issue anymore. And, there was also Jewish people were not always allowed into other hotels, and there were definitely some hotels that had Gentile only rules. And so there were many reasons why the Borscht Belt had its place and was so enduring, but those reasons aren't there anymore. And I explore in the book, which is set in modern times, like, well, they're not there, but is there a reason to keep it going anyway? Nostalgia, culture, maybe we don't need to go to Iceland on the weekends. Maybe there's something to be said about everybody returning to this familiar place that really was a second home to so many people.
And it's almost a forgotten time or way of life that it seems like people took extended vacations.
Yes.
There, which is just completely foreign from our modern way of thinking. But life, evolved. It was a different way of living. That when you went to a place like this, or read a story about a place like this, it was almost like being transported to an enchanting world in a way.
I think so. I mean, people did. And that's the other thing with the way we all work now, although maybe things are changing after this year of COVID,
Right.
more of a work from home model. But, if you wind back the clock to 2019, I mean, people were logging like 14-hour days in the office, and things were different then. And we weren't always connected by smartphones. So people would go away for 4 weeks at a time to, the wealthier people went to the hotels, the less wealthy people went to the bungalow colonies that they rented for the entire summer. Often it was the wife and children would spend the whole summer there. The husband would get on I can't even remember the route name, Route 17 maybe, and drive for 6 hours up on a Friday to join the family. I mean, now we live in a time when most women work and men can't take off, the last 2 weeks in August always, or the entire month of August. And, we're expected to have a lot of connectivity. You can't just play 18 holes of golf or bridge all day. Maybe we should return to that. But yes, I mean, the Catskills was definitely a place of leisure, and we don't really have that anymore, sadly, in our lives.
So understanding all of that about the cultural phenomenon that is the Catskills, in this period of time, the last summer at the Golden Hotel is about one of these places and the families that own it, and how it has changed through the years, and what these families' connection still is to this place. How did you come up with the idea for this? What was it? What was the idea that you were wrestling with that birthed this story?
I was at lunch with my agent and my editor, and we're trying to, just think about building on Feldmans and thinking about wanting to write about a business. I think hospitality is a really interesting, much like in Floating Feldmans, where the cruise ship was like a character, the hotel is definitely a character in this book. And when I read some of the early reviews, people are like, the hotel was a character in and of itself. And so to be able to write, to set a book in such a rich landscape is so exciting. So I love the idea of choosing a setting that's so rich with detail and so fun to bring to life that in and of itself makes the book worth writing.
When you're thinking about the families that own this property, and we really get into the family drama of multi-generational family, and they're all tied to this property and what that means to each of them, and all of this. How did you start thinking about the families and what their individual stakes would be in the story?
It's so hard to answer that. I wish I could remember. I mean, I definitely knew that I wanted the two grandfather characters to have been the founders, and then to get married once they already have the hotel and have, these women that don't get along as well, because I think that was a nice conflict. And when you write, you look for areas of natural conflict, because nobody wants to write about a bunch of people that all get along perfectly well. That's
Right.
not, that doesn't make for an interesting book. And so that was a natural place of conflict. And then I just start thinking about their family trees and what would create conflict? What would be the reasons they feel jealous? And what would make an interesting sibling relationship and who could have a crush on who. Well, I need someone, I want someone to be a girl and someone to be a boy. And then I think about their children. And if Amy's an only child, well, I want her to have a lot of children because she hated being an only, and I want these twins that they take totally different paths in life, because that's interesting when you grow up in the same house and you turn out so differently. So there's just I would say there's infinite ideas are going through my head, and then some of them just come back to me, and they keep coming back to me as worth pursuing. And that's sort of how my characters are. Like when I hit on an idea and it leaves me, or I don't find myself constantly returning to it, I realize that it's not one of my stronger ones. But when I have characters, like I could picture Louise, she's the sort of, fancy public face of the hotel. And she sort of reminded me of Jenny Grosinger, who from Grosinger's Resort, which was one of the most famous resorts in the region. And she was the public face. I mean, that people went there to kiss her ring. And I wanted someone like that to be in the book. And so Louise was born. And I also then you pick character situations based on sometimes current events. Like I had just gotten so interested in reading about the OxyContin controversy and scandal with Purdue Pharmaceuticals. And I read a lot about it just because I found it personally interesting. And then I ended up writing a character who's one of these doctors that overwrites these Oxy scripts, so it can be something in the news that pushes me to write about a certain character. And then, I have a gay character in the third generation. And it was important to me to explore that because that was not a thing in the Catskills. I'm not saying people weren't gay, but they weren't out. And it was the place to go and find a nice boy for your daughter and a nice, girl for your son. It was very traditional matchmaking happening there. And so I wanted to turn that idea on its head. And so these are some of the ideas that floated around my mind and, helped me create the characters that I did.
I love it. Elyssa, I know that you said that, you in your personal life, humor is very important to you, and it's how you navigate life in a lot of ways. And I can completely relate to that. But in your writing, what role does humor play? Because you can have very serious scenes, and a moment of levity can do more to drive home the stakes of the serious scene by giving the reader an emotional break of sorts, and it almost enhances the other emotions with humor. It's an interesting play that you can make with emotions that way. But do you think about humor in your writing, or is this just a natural expression that comes out, or do you start looking for places that maybe you need to let the reader off the hook a little bit and that sort of thing?
It more comes naturally. I would say it's an organic process. I don't really look at my pages and say, wow, this has been really, really, really heavy. Although I suppose if I have a very serious chapter and two people are kind of having a reckoning with each other and it's pretty heavy, I would then I might think, let me open the next chapter with something ridiculous, like something that is like a total break in the action. So I guess I probably do it without even thinking about it. But it's like the way I think in my own life, I just something heavy, and then I don't put on a heavy TV show. If something heavy happened to me during the day, then I put on a light TV show, and vice versa. If I had a very light day, then I can handle something heavier at night to watch or to read. So I think this ebb and flow is natural in my life and in my writing.
Last Summer at the Golden Hotel is available everywhere today. When you're hearing this, it's release day for the book. Congratulations on that, Elyssa. We're going to put links to it in the show notes of this episode to make it easy for folks to find if they want to order it online in Kindle edition, or if they want to hold the paper in their hands. Also, it's available in audiobook today. How do you feel about your work being translated to audio?
Well, I got very lucky because Julia Whalen is the audio narrator, and she's like probably the most famous working audio narrator.
Oh, she's
today.
fantastic.
She's amazing. And I've listened to many books, and I asked my publisher if they would ask her, and they did, and she was available, which was amazing. And I have not heard it yet. I cannot wait to hear it. But she takes her job like really, really, really seriously. I mean, in the sense that, this is my fourth novel. They've all been in audio format, and I've never had an audio narrator send me an email with so many specific questions to make sure that we nailed everybody's voice perfectly, correctly, and down to like a waiter who comes in and has one line, but I mentioned he's from a certain place, and then she wants to, absolutely have his accent accurate. And she's a master of her craft. And I think that with this big cast of characters and her amazing voice, like the audio experience is going to be incredible. It's probably the thing I'm like the most excited about to listen to.
Well, speaking of Julia Whelan, I have bought audiobooks that I was not familiar with the author, but because she narrated it, I knew that it was going to be a safe purchase. So that I'm excited to listen to the audio for that, for sure.
Yeah, no. She's amazing.
Yeah. Well, we'll put links to that in the show notes as well if you want to grab the audio. Elyssa, thank you so much for taking time to come back on the show today, and congratulations on Book Launch Day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an exciting day.
Authors, if you're looking for a partner to help ensure that your book is the best it can possibly be, look no further than Pico's House. Crystal and her staff make a conscious effort to be critical yet courteous. They also strive to make the business side of things run smoothly so that you can rest easy knowing that your manuscript is in capable hands. Whether you need beta reading, developmental editing, a manuscript critique, line editing, copy editing, or proofreading, Pico's House is the one-stop shop for you. Check them out today at picoshouse.com to get started.